One of my favorite things in Secret of Mana is the magic system. Certainly the Mana Knight's physical attacks are strong enough, but a little magic here and there goes a long way, and it's just fun to use. So that's what we're going to be having a look at here. First off, let's examine the girl's magic. She's sort of the white mage of the party. Most of her magic deals with healing and party buffs, though there are a few attacks thrown in as well. The girl's first magic spells come from Undine, the water elemental. So let's have a look at what she gets from her. The first of Undine's spells is actually probably one of the most common ones you'll end up using, and that's Cure Water. It's inexpensive and a very handy way to heal the injuries you're likely to incur through the course of the game. Like all spells, Cure Water does have a critical form. I'm not quite sure that it affects how much it heals you, but it does affect the visual, adding a second drop to the mix. Very pretty, that. Along the way, you're likely to get slammed with a lot of status effects. That's where the next spell comes in. It's time to look at Remedy. Remedy is kind of the magic equivalent of the medicinal herb. It cures any status effects that you may have taken on, such as poison or unconsciousness. Rather handy, that, and very inexpensive at 1 magic point. It too can go critical, but it doesn't really look any different, nor does it have any extra effects. But then, with such a simple, cheap spell, what do you really expect? Next up we have the first of the Saber buffs, Ice Saber. These are some rather nice spells, adding not only an element, but sometimes a special effect onto your weapons. In the case of Ice Saber, it gives your spell water element, and also gives you the chance to Frosty the opponent. Now, there are good points to this and bad points. It makes the enemy immobile, but as long as they're stuck in snowman form, you can't cause extra damage. And for those wondering, yeah, elemental hits from weapons still don't work on LA Funk, but he can happily cast Freeze on you still. These spells can also go critical. I'm not sure if it makes the spell last any longer, but it does make bigger stars strike out for quite an impressive display. Next up we have Gnome, the Earth Elemental. His buffs can help out, especially early on in the game, so let's see what he has. The first of Gnome's spells is a kinda strange one, Speed Up. It doesn't really have the effect you'd think it would. It doesn't seem to have any bearing on your actual walking speed. What it does, however, is raises your hit ratio and your evade ratio, making it easier for you to hit the enemy, but harder for them to hit you. Now, there is one warning to keep in mind, though. Even though you have a higher evade rate, it still won't protect you from magic, so that's still gonna hit you no matter what. Of course, it does also have a critical effect. The look of this one, it just seems to make the explosive stars around the target a bit brighter and more pronounced. Next up, we have Defender. Pretty much, this one is exactly what it says on the tin. It raises your base defense stat, making the default attacks of enemies do less damage to you. Of course, it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world to show a good demonstration of. I mean, how do you really see visual proof that it's doing less damage? Just take my word for it. Defender also has a critical effect. Once used, it makes 8 defense orbs appear around the target instead of the 4 of the normal look. Finally, we have Stone Saber, another of the weapon buffs. This one's pricey, but with good reason, as not only does it give your weapon Earth Elemental characteristics, but it also provides the chance to cause Petrify status to the enemy, and that's one of the most useful ones. Once petrified, an enemy cannot move, but unlike the Frosty effect, they can still take damage. I'm not quite certain, but it almost seems like it raises the chance of the enemy taking a critical hit as well. That or it suffers a very slight defense, a debuff. I'm not quite sure, but they seem weaker. Much like Ice Saber, this one just causes bigger stars. Still an impressive display, though. Next on the list is Sylphid, the Air Elemental. These are some fairly odd spells, but certainly useful. So let's see what we have here. The first of Sylphid's spells is a rather strange one, rather silly. It's called Balloon. This has to be one of the strangest status effects to have in an RPG. As the name suggests, it just puts a balloon over the enemy. It keeps them immobile and makes them an easy target. When used as a critical, the balloon becomes even more ridiculous. If that little blue bunny wasn't enough for you, well... Moogle! Not pictured in these demos is the most basic form of balloon, which just puts a simple red balloon over the enemy. Next up, we have a rather useful spell, Analyzer. When used on the enemy, this reveals various bits of information about them. It tells you their health, magic, experience value, gold value, and if they have an elemental weakness. That's right, Spider Legs, you should fear Sylphid. He can see you even when you're hiding. Analyzer has other uses as well. When used on a crystal orb, it'll tell you what kind of magic you need to use to get past it. And when used on a treasure chest, it'll let you know if it's trapped or not. If the treasure chest flashes red like this, it means it's safe. At least, usually. Kind of counterintuitive, that. However, I have had instances at the Mana Fortress where I've used Analyzer on a treasure chest. It stayed green like it normally is, but it's been safe to open. I don't know quite what to make of that. Programming error? Glitch? You be the judge. Finally, we have Thunder Saber. Unlike most of the other Saber buffs, this one is kinda strange. It doesn't actually give you a secondary effect. It does put wind element on your weapons, and it also slightly raises your attack power, but that's about it. I thought I read somewhere that it upped the critical ratio, but I haven't really noticed that to be the case. And of course, for the critical, we all know the drill by now. Bigger stars for everyone! Huzzah! Now it's time for Salamando, the fire elemental. So cute, but how do you use fire as a buff? Well, apparently you don't, so let's see some attack magic. First up, we have Blaze Wall, a rather nice spell to use on the enemy. Not only does this one cause damage, but it also inflicts Engulf status. This one keeps the enemy sitting there burning like a merry little campfire, constantly losing health and unable to move. And hey, you can even keep stacking on the damage during this. Quite nice indeed, that. A very useful status effect. When used as a critical, the fire pillars get all the more impressive. However, there is something rather strange about it. It seems like the graphics coding gets a little bit confused if there's too much going on the screen at once. Using this one on more than one target is bound to bring up some graphical glitches. Yeah. Just what is it picking up on there? That's definitely a thing. Next we have Fire Bouquet. Besides sounding pretty cool, this one does damage and also lowers the attack stat of the enemy. Thus, this can be a pretty useful one in some situations, not only striking with some damage, but making it so they don't hit quite so hard. As a critical, the fire gets all the more impressive, but there is something rather odd to note. While you can target all enemies on screen, only one fire bouquet ring will actually show up when used as a critical. I guess more fire was just too hot to handle for the Super Nintendo. Finally, we have Flame Saber. This is quite a lovely buff spell. It puts fire element on your weapons, and also gives you the ability to strike and cause engulf. So this one is highly useful. Very, very recommended. The Iffish here are already weak to fire, so I can't really show that part of it. Okay, that one's burning nicely. Ooh, blue drops. You like to throw out status effects? How do you like having them? Yes, sweet flame sabery revenge! Burn! Bigger stars, bigger stars, bigger stars, and that's about it.